Hi, welcome to Blackjack and Hooker's Tokyo Drift, our summer rewatch of Survivor Philippines. I'm your host, Emma, here with my co-host, Matt.
Great to be back, Emma. And before we launch into it, there's something a little different about you. You get some new glasses?
Actually, they're the same frames. I replaced the lenses, though, and I didn't splurge for the reflective coating, so that might be what you're thinking.
Nah, probably miss your old glasses.
Yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit.
Okay. Well, congrats anyway.
Thanks.
But we're glad to. If you missed those inside jokes, don't worry about it. I just want to embarrass Emma on air. But we're glad to be here talking about talking about the merge for Philippines.
Yep. We had the 3 tribes have become 2 tribes. Now they're 1 tribe. Dang rang.
I wonder how they came up with that name.
It's really a shame they don't talk about, because usually it's such a stupid thing. It's here's, and we'll hear them discuss well, I don't know, let's combine, it'd be Tan Ba, let's combine the tribe names. And this one, they came up with something funny. They were it's been raining all the time and we're mad about it. Yeah. And they don't obviously. And while the second 2 episodes of this little block we're talking about have a lot going on, the merge episode is obviously the merge always has a lot going on, but this one in particular with a little, I feel like we could have spared 20 seconds on Ding Rain.
I think so too. But what I've heard, and our resident gossips can verify this in the comments after the episode, is that the reason they don't talk about it is because they wanted to make the name a lot more explicit, and production interfered.
Hey, remember, we've got the explicit tag. We can say it if we want.
Yeah, exactly. I actually forget what exactly the precise explicitness they wanted.
I think it was just supposed to be fucking rain.
Something like that, yeah. But
I don't think it would. Looking at the other options, I don't think it would have been shit and rain.
Yeah, that doesn't have the same. Let's go through the George Carlin 7 words and see which ones the best with rain.
Even it's funny that they then went to dang, because I feel even having damn rain, you're allowed to say that. So, but
no, because I think they wanted to say fucking rain, and then they're like, well, how about damn rain? And production's like, they're like, dang rain, and production's like, fine, we're not showing it.
To be fair, it kind of blends a little better as dang rain. I think
it does.
It sounds more like a fake tribe name.
Hold on once. There might be technical difficulties at the moment. Let me see what's going on here. Hold on. If you guys can hear us right now, could you tweet at us? We got someone saying that they can't hear us, and I am curious if this is just them or is all of us?
Right. Da, da, da.
Man, yeah, this is great podcast right here. Should
we? Hopefully, should we vamp a little bit?
I feel like we should probably keep going, and
maybe maybe this is one instance where Andy will agree to actually edit the audio version of this podcast.
Yeah, okay.
No, but of course, no one is following through, whether.
Whether or not this is actually
working. John tells us they say this knows. Oh, wait.
Okay, Andy says we're good. So we just wasted a good minute there, possibly on nothing.
Blame BJ. Girl, maybe you just didn't turn your sound on. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, let's not worry about that. Let's talk about the episode. No need to cast blame. So we merge. The name.
It's just a shout out. It's because we mentioned gossips earlier.
Yeah, that is true. We merge. We talked about the name a bit. Let's talk about kind of what's the meat of this episode, which is Jeff Kent's enduring hatred of Jonathan Penner.
Yeah, he, for someone who, you know, had the opportunity to vote Penner out and decided not to, he sure wants to, you know, sabotage his game to make sure he goes home.
Yeah, let's actually talk about that aspect first, because I think this might be like one of the more interesting aspects of it. Jeff Kent makes a specific choice at the last tribal council to keep Penner around, to keep Penner over Katie, who he knows would probably still be loyal to him. And he does this even though he wants to get Penner out. And then pretty much immediately after they merge, like immediately, they're turning on each other right away. So what the heck is going on there? Like, what is that thought process?
I don't know. I mean, it's like maybe he thinks it doesn't make sense because it's like, oh, maybe he thinks someone recognizes him and so he won't be able to win. But like that, maybe he thought like, well, if Dawson knew me, surely this Pete fellow will know who I am. But that seems pretty flawed. And he thinks he doesn't win, so he has some other goal he wants. Or
I mean,
I just, it doesn't, it's such a bad idea. Like, even the idea of like, oh, we don't want to let one of these returning players win. Sure, that's something great to hold on to when the numbers get smaller. And then you can be like, we don't want to let one of these returning players win, so we better vote them off at 5 and make sure I'm here. Like, I know Penner wins a challenge this episode, next episode, this block of episodes. But really, like, is Jeff Kent seriously afraid that Penner's going to go on like a Mike Holloway-esque tear when you have Carter and Denise and Malcolm and Pete and like all these perfectly strong
and himself. Like,
and himself. But, like,
I mean, no, it's really ridiculous, especially because I think they even joke about the possibility, like, you know, of how silly it would be if Penner even won. So it's just kind. I mean, like, I kind of feel like what happened was he kept Penner around, maybe because he thought there'd be another challenge, because he knew that, you know, Penner, you know, is actually pretty good in team challenges, at least. Mm-hmm. He wanted to keep him around for that, you know, maybe keep the numbers up, but maybe also he hits the merge and he's getting along with like Pete and those guys well enough to know that he would have some ins with them. Mm-hmm. Maybe. I don't know.
For a while there, it seems almost like they have kind of a weird cross-tribal group going, which is surprising in a situation when, you know, the numbers are so stacked against, but they also have those outsiders. But it's just so weird.
I mean, yeah, and it's weird that, you know, no, because the other part of it that's weird is he goes to Pete and it's like, look, I really want Penner out. And Pete's like, because Pete being the mastermind that he is, he's like, oh, yeah, no, that's great to us, which... That's good, Pete. But then Pete goes on to say, but if it's not Penner, it should be RC, right? Which, like, you know.
Which is especially weird because why not say Scoopin at that? If you're going to sacrifice a member of your own tribe, at least keep on the same thesis argument of the returning players.
Well, I mean, it's not even just that part, but he just basically hands Jeff Kent everything he needs to know to actually flip the game if he wants to, which is the fact that, you know, RC and Scoopin are up for grabs. Jeff Kent can now take his Calabao, flip the game on them if he wants to, but instead he's still fixated on Penner.
Yeah, the weirdest thing of it all is that they have this perfect opportunity where they have, you know, 2 people. Like, the weirdest thing about having this sort of conjoined tribe, like pseudo alliance with like Jeff and Carter working with Pete and artists and stuff, is that they had these like gift wrapped 2 people who they could have easily paired up with, easily gotten rid of once they're at the end. And like they would have, you know, Pete would have been gone, and that seems like a better idea. It's just now even then Penner, like who at that point was a bigger risk to win? If nobody wants returning players to win the game, they're not going to vote for them to win the game.
Yeah, right. I mean, now the one thing I could see is maybe Jeff Kent didn't think that RC was sincere about voting with him, and so like getting Penner out was maybe he thought that Tandang would not crack. Maybe he thought that like all the RC talk was like fake and that like Tandang wouldn't crack. So this is like, you throw Penner out there as a way to kind of advance your own game, you know, get yourself 1 vote further.
Although the other thing is, oh, and you know what, I'll concede a little bit of his like using that to get rid of Penner later is that he knows Penner has an idol, but you could still kind of find a situation where you just,
use Penner's idol to get out Pete. Why use Penner's idol to get out RC?
Which even Penner is like, oh, if you guys had told me, like we could have done something here.
Yeah.
Plus,
Penner tells them all that the next day, which I will say the big mistake Penner makes is that he's only told Jeff Kent about the idol. If he really is in like a strong like Calabao 4, he has to tell Denise, he has to tell Carter. They have to know that they have some power. Here. Right, yeah, they have to know they have some group power. Throw the blame onto Penner. He plays the idol, and then they can get out their choice. Because then while Jeff Kent might be wanting to defect, I don't think the others will. I think Denise feel like and Carter would stay with him.
Yeah, I mean, Carter probably would just do whatever Jeff said, but I feel like Denise was like, well, this is the option right now. And at that point, I think it wasn't clear who the Denise Malcolm faction was going to side with. And in this instance, it seemed like they were sticking with Tandang, but then after that, they immediately are no longer a part of that, which we will get into later.
Yes.
But another quick thing is just that I find interesting, even if Jeff Kent didn't trust RC or Scoopin, they still, like Pete, the whole plan Pete proposes involves a split vote, which is something that makes it so easy to exploit a larger alliance. Like, there's 7 of them, there's 4 of you, you're supposed to be in on the split. Like, you should be able to, I mean, maybe, I guess if they were doing 4-3 and they make sure all the Calabal people are one, that could be tough, but it gives you something to work with, like get Denise to pull Malcolm or anything.
Yeah, and I think that was how the split went down, but I'm not positive.
I mean, that would be the smart move of Pete.
Right. There is really one really funny moment when they count up the votes and they're like, so it'll be 5 here and 5 here. And he's like, and what happens then? And Malcolm chimes up and is like, oh, when there's a tie, we then revote and vote onto this person. And Pete's like, oh, is that what happens? Great. Yeah, we'll just do that. Because it's like Malcolm actually knows how to play the game.
Right. Yeah. Malcolm watches the show. Is familiar with it.
It was just really funny that like he knew the tie breaking,
yeah, it's like Todd explaining the idols to James in China.
Exactly.
All right, so all that happens. They go to tribal. Jeff nope. Jonathan Penner.
There you go.
J's and P's, man, they're all over the place. Penner plays his idol, and RC goes home, and there you go.
Yep, and that's and there really isn't that much more to say about episode 1, or there's a few small moments, but they get kind of wrapped up into stuff we're going to be talking about in these later episodes. And so we'll kind of hit them as we hit the other ones. But then we go kind of into the next day. Sorry.
Well, I guess it does. It's how you were saying it gets wrapped up. But I was going to say, I was just double checking my notes. We do have the Lisa going through Malcolm's laundry and discovering his idol.
Yeah, I mean, and that's actually like a pretty funny scene because Malcolm's with Denise at this moment. And Denise is like, hey, where's your idol? And he's like, oh, it's with my bag. Where's my bag? Oh, crap.
Yeah.
And
he's, is just like, and she's just trying to be nice. And like, do everyone jokes about.
Right. And then like when she promises not to tell us, he's like, thank God the church lady found it or something like that.
Well, we'll see how that works out for you, Malcolm.
Yeah. But we'll get to that. There is also the one, I mean, we can get to that later, but there's some funny moments as there's like just scrambling. And even the tribal, we start to see this tribal starts what's going to be a trend from here on out, which is Abby's so freaking bad at this game because just terrible because it's they're talking about like Tandang versus Calabao, all that stuff. And then Abby's like, well, yeah, except for RC because she betrayed me. And Jeff is like, oh, you just volunteering that up, just like volunteering your fractures up to the other side. And she's like, oh, she knows what she did.
Abby just loves to say, loves to volunteer stuff at tribal. That's just her favorite thing.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and actually, and also I think it's also in this episode. Lisa at Tribal, I think, makes a really good argument against flipping, which will become funnier later. But it's not the whole like flippers die, flippers never win, which isn't true. But what you said
Right.
is that once you flip, you show that you're a weak number because you cannot be trusted in this one instance. And that is actually kind of true because like it shows that you are not like necessarily part of the same core like everyone else is. And now people don't always act on that, but it does show a bit of you know individuality in your game that other people have not exhibited yet. So and that's why people a lot of times vote out flippers right after they flip.
Yeah, and I'll just say in honor of John, just one last little RC dig from when she her final words, where she says during her final words, she says, how she didn't see it coming. She's like, "That's the name of the game, Blindside." And no, it's not.
No,
It's
no, it's not. The
Survivor.
name of the game is Survivor. The name
It's
is
called
Survivor.
Survivor.
Right. Blindside is a different show. Actually, I don't think that is a show. No.
Let's start it right now.
No, it's a movie. The Blind Side is a movie starring Sandra Bullock.
Well, yeah, that's different. I feel like you could get away with having a show called Blinds, but let's not get into the weeds about that.
What would a show called Blind Side be about? A guy who's like blind in one eye?
I could see it being like a CBS procedural about
about someone who's blind in one eye and solves crimes using his lack of depth perception.
He'd be like Daredevil, but like not a superhero, just like a guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, if we see this happening,
no.
Blackjack and Hookers
idea, right here. No. Okay. So Penner played his idol. Everyone votes out RC. Penner comes back to camp and is basically just like, "Hey, did you guys all vote for me?" And because I love Denise, I want to point out that she immediately says, "Yep, I voted for you, Penner."
Yeah, I think like his feelings are kind of hurt, which I get, but it's just like, wait, I thought, like, I knew we were at a numbers disadvantage, but I thought we had like our 4 strong, and they all voted. They were all totally willing to sacrifice me, and that sucks.
Right, and not only that, but they kept him out of the loop, and he's like, I had the idol, like we could have gotten Pete out. This couldn't work for us. Like, what happened, guys? No, you're right. I think that the big thing is his feelings are hurt, which is a very funny thing to imagine of a guy like Jonathan Penner, but I think it's definitely true.
Yeah, and totally, I think not an unreasonable reaction, but
yeah.
And so he knows at this point that he's like a dead man walking. Like everyone's like, okay, like Penner is clearly the next person we're voting out. There's no reason to vote for anyone but Penner. We know he doesn't have an idol. It would be crazy if anything could happen. I guess if you want a challenge, but that seems unlikely.
Right. So what happens? Penner wins immunity.
And there was much rejoicing amongst the audience.
Oh man, it was such a great moment. And so like when Penner wins, that just sets off what is just one of my favorite episodes of Survivor, like, and I do mean this ever. This is such a great episode.
It's good.
And it's not just because of the great tribal, which is great, but the scramble is great too, because that target moves around. That target just moves. It starts off, well, obviously, as we talked about, it starts off on Penner, and then it goes to Scoopin because we can't let a returning player win. Lisa is actually tight with Scoopin. Sorry, what?
Sorry, did you hear a weird noise? It's just go on. I heard something weird. I got confused.
Sorry. But right. So now the target's on Scoopin, and that seems like, a target that might be safe. Only Lisa's tight with Scoopin, so she wants to move it off him. So she outs Malcolm's idol, which then sets off, I think, one of both of our favorite moments of this season.
Yes.
Pete, dismayed to learn that Malcolm has an idol and didn't tell Pete, Malcolm's best bro.
Right. They're both 24, Matt. I don't know if you realize that.
I do, in fact. I
It's
do
a pretty
realize
tight bond. So.
it is. Yeah, being the same age as someone, you can't really get past that. So yeah, so Pete, he's devastated. You can see like the hurt in his eyes. Like you can pinpoint the second his heart breaks if you slow it down.
I just watched that episode last night. But yeah, no. During that tribal, when Malcolm like brings out his eye, he looks so crushed. He's like, "But I looked into your soul and I believed you."
Well, wait, and that's the part we haven't gotten back. So Pete confronts Malcolm and it's like, Malcolm, Lisa told me you have an idol. And Malcolm's like, no, I don't. What are you talking about? No, an idol, me, no. And Pete's like, oh yeah, he's telling the truth.
Yeah,
and
he wouldn't have been so freaked out if he had an idol. He would have definitely not been worried about people thinking he had an idol if he had an idol. That doesn't make any sense.
Right. And as you alluded to, he said he looked into Malcolm's soul and he could tell he was telling the truth.
He did. He looked right in there.
I think Pete should not quit his day job of probably not really having a day job.
Engineering graduate.
Oh, we all know that shorthand from actor.
Yeah. I mean, and like I get it. He's got the looks. I could see it.
I could see you looking off into the distance there. Is that?
If we're looking at just physical appearance, I go Pete over Malcolm.
Sure.
Everything else, Malcolm over Pete, obviously.
Well, I mean, I don't know you. I do know you. That's a lie. I do know you.
We may not have met, but we've been talking online for like 5 years.
Has it really been that long? Okay.
I know, it's disturbing, but it's true.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So now, right. So now the target may have moved to Malcolm.
Mm-hmm.
Only at some point.
God forbid.
Only at some point then it flips to Jeff Kent, which then leads to one of the always classic. People are talking about, well, who are we voting tonight? I think it's Jeff. And then like everyone looks around and Jeff is like sitting right in the background. He's like, wait, what's going on? Are we voting for Malcolm tonight? And Carter's like, I thought it was you.
And people talk about this Carter moment a lot, and it's funny. But I do want to say for Carter's in Carter's defense, I don't believe it's not like the Penner thing where I don't believe he was saying like I think he was like, I think they're talking about you. He just says it in such a doofy way, but like any ally would like tell like if they don't want their ally to be voted, like, yeah, man, like last I heard they're talking about you. I don't know why they talked about it in front of me. They probably forgot I was there, but they're talking about you.
Yeah, no. So I mean, it's all oh man, it's all really good. And just going to tribal, it's actually like, because there was this weird like mishmash alliance in the last episode, and because their one target was Penner, you really just have no idea where people are sitting this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And like you don't really know who's in play. And so it's like because Malcolm is now burned by Tandang, so he's not with them anymore. Right. And I mean, and they got rid of RC, so now they don't have the numbers if Malcolm flips. So it sets up a really interesting tribal counselor, and then it delivers and more. Because this is council.
It's so great. It even made our bracket, which I tried to sneakily, because I forgot to look it up beforehand, tried to sneakily check to see how far it made it on our bracket and was not able to do so. But it's there. So go check that out. You
can look and tell us.
Someone will know. But even to make the round of 32 or whatever is impressive. So it's got, and like I think what this tribal is often remembered for is what happens at the very, very end. But throughout, full of entertainment.
Oh yeah, because again, I talked about how Abby starts to like show her Abbiness last tribal. Oh, now it comes out in full force.
So much Abby.
This comes out because Abby basically starts tribal by yelling at her one of her core alliance mates in Lisa, and is like, Lisa, you're doing a terrible job. And Lisa's like, I mean, you're the one criticizing me. really, Abby? I mean, like, everyone's looking at her like, seriously?
She's like, I do a terrible job by trying to make sure we don't vote out one of our own.
Right.
Like,
I mean, like, and it's like, and it's really clear, but, and Abby's like, oh, well, Malcolm was much more in the alliance than Scoopin ever was, which then, of course, shows Scoopin that he's on the bottom of their own alliance when they need his vote. I mean, like, so she starts off Tribal basically alienating two people, the two people that they need to even tie it up. I don't even know what their path was to a sixth vote. Like, I don't think they even had one, I mean, and then, it's nuts. Then, of course, Malcolm, he plays the classic, one of the moves I've always respected Malcolm's game of, everyone knows I have the idol, time to show off I have the idol, and threaten to play it and not play it.
Right. And, I think depending on how things went, obviously he would have, but he was confident enough in the scare. But then, so he pulls it out, phrasing,
right.
And Probst is running like, wow, okay, that's because now maybe it doesn't seem that wild, but let's remember back in season 25, like, this was not a thing that you did. So, so Malcolm pulls out his idol, and Probst is like, what? This is great. He's like, this is the wildest tribal council I have ever been a part of. Nothing shall ever top this. And then it's like, does anyone else have, like, facetiously, is like, does anyone else have an idol they want to put?
And he is so clearly being, like, facetious. He is not expecting an answer. And Abby just, like, interprets it completely dead serious. Yes, Jeff, it's like, yes, I have an idol right here. And everyone's looking at her like, oh, are you crazy? Why would you show that?
I will say, in reluctant defense of Abby, it's possible that, a sarcastic tone is hard to get when English is not your first language. But still, it's Survivor, and it's sort of like Jeff Kent's four-fingered handshake. You can just lie.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to answer the question if it's asked to you. Yeah. What's actually funny about Abby is that as terrible as she is at this game, I don't think she ever lies. She's bad because she always tells the truth.
Right. And, it's like those things that are true in life, too. It's like someone be like, oh, I'm just brutally honest. And it's like, or you're a dick. Like, you don't have to always volunteer information.
You're just an asshole. You're not brutally honest. You're just an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she pulls it out. And I mean, oh my God, it's so good. And so, I mean, by this point, it seems the battle lines are super clearly drawn, right? It seems that you have, like, original Tandang versus everyone else, right? 5-on-5, clear as day. How does the vote turn out? 5 for Jeff Kent, 4 for, who'd they even vote for? Was it Pete?
Pete. Sorry, Pete. Yeah, who looks like visibly taken when he starts getting votes.
Yeah, and then 1 for Abby. 1 for Abby.
Right.
And it's like, I mean, like, and one of the things I focused on was, like, they showed Malcolm, and Malcolm is just shell shocked.
He's like, wait,
because he's had his because he's had his game, like, it's like he had his game completely blown up this episode. He had a chance to pull it out. Like, he could get the tie vote, and then, like, there's, like, one person who, like, didn't figure out what the fuck was going on. And who was that person?
Jonathan Penner.
Voted for Abby. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about...
Not only did Jeff Kent not get farther than Penner, but Penner was ultimately the cause of his demise.
Well, right. And let's actually talk a little bit about why Penner votes for Abby. Because, okay, well, first question. Is it deliberate? Because he comes back to the beach the next episode, and he's like, "Oh, like, you guys, I couldn't tell what was going on." Like, it's like he's throwing around a lot of kind of excuses there.
Yeah, it's with Penner pulling the Natalie Anderson thing, but without us getting a confessional showing, behind the curtain, or did he really just mess up?
Right, because here's the other thing. if Penner did tie it up and they went to rocks, which I'm not sure they would, I kind of feel like Skupin might flip in that situation, but I'm not positive.
Right.
But if they did go to rocks, Penner's the one person who's safe. He has immunity. He can't get rocked.
That's true.
So if Penner was scared of rocks, this doesn't make sense for him to throw the vote away. I think the only reason it makes sense is because Penner needed Jeff Kent out for him to go further in the game.
Yeah.
As long as Jeff Kent was in the game, he was a target. Penner was the target of Jeff Kent.
Right, and sure we see Penner kind of continue to be a target to a point, but it's certainly not as
not as focused as Jeff Kent was. Jeff Kent was so focused on Jonathan Penner, and Penner realized it, and he knew he had to get him out. And I feel like he threw the vote away to get him out.
Yeah, that's definitely. I feel like it's.
I guess then just the one question is. Well, I mean, the only way he could do that is if he knew the votes were going to Jeff Kent. So do you think that Skupin clued him in? Because it seems like they were talking a lot.
Yeah, they do seem to have a returning player rapport.
I mean, now that would be, I feel, a lot to leave out of the episode if that did happen.
That's true.
But on the other hand,
there was a lot in the episode. They had a lot.
There was a lot in the episode, and I mean, and it wasn't just there's a lot in the episode, but Penner has a lot of flaws as a Survivor player. I don't feel like this is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But that's my read. My read was Penner needed Jeff Kent gone. I think Skupin needed Jeff Kent gone, sure. And they took, and I think they kind of took an opportunity there.
It just seems like it would be such a foolish thing. And he's like, oh, I was mad at Abby, so I voted for it's. I don't know. Yeah. It just doesn't make sense. But before we fully move on
there is actually. Oh, sorry. There is one more reason I could think of for why he voted for Abby. And it kind of manifests itself in the next episode, which is if you think you're losing the vote, tick Abby off. Just have her blowing up at everyone. And, because that's a great way for, allies to scatter.
Yeah, that's true. She's a good fire starter.
Yep.
There.
Okay.
And then,
go on. No, you go on, please. No, I was going to tee you up there. Don't.
Okay, sorry.
You can roll your eyes.
I was just going to say, before we, fully move on to the next episode, I think what we really need to talk about are Jeff Kent's final words.
Yes, which I want you to talk about because you're the Giants fan. I was going to tee you up. I'm sorry for keep interrupting you.
It's fine. I mean, luckily, the time this aired, the Game 7 World Series loser thing didn't hurt quite as much. We had. Let's see. I think. Was it late enough that 2012 had happened too? I think so. So yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm over it. But it was just I remember there being a lot of jokes about does he think Obama made income tax laws, But my personal favorite part of that speech is just the venom of which he says the word frickin'. Because that's it's so sharp. It's this frickin' $1 million.
I probably made over $60 million over my career, but I really wanted this frickin' $1 million.
Yeah, and it's
after taxes, it wouldn't even be $1 million. It would be $600,000. Thanks, Obama.
Well, that's the thing. That's the
he never actually says that part. He never says that part.
There was a while where I think my brain had convinced me that Jeff Kent somehow started the Thanks Obama meme. And I hate that's been taken away from me because what a world. But yeah, no, he's like, 600,000 by the time Obama takes it. This, I've played a tough game. This is stupid. It's just I
just love it. I love it because he actually when he leaves. Yeah, like when he's like walking out, he's actually still pretty calm. And then the second the camera gets on him again, he's just like you could tell that like he's just boiling over. But I mean, like I actually really enjoyed Jeff Kent this season. I thought he was a very fun like celebrity personality playing the game. I got a lot of amusement out of him.
Yeah, I think it's like, sure, like Jeff Kent may be known for being an asshole, but like who was more of a like entertaining and not like unpleasant asshole on Survivor in terms of athletes? Jeff Kent or Scott Pollard? You know, like
yeah.
If you're gonna go that route, like I think I'd rather the kind of like weird vindictive thing of Jeff Kent rather than like any actual like bullying or like full on douchey. I mean, like there were bigger dicks on Jeff Kent season, you know?
Yeah. Right. I mean, well, and it's actually funny because Jeff Kent even talks about the fact, and this happens earlier in the episode because, again, a lot happens this episode, but he talks about how one of the reason he is allied with the Tandang 3 is because everyone hates them and he thinks he could use them and then beat them because people will eventually turn on them, which I'm not sure if that's right because I feel like everyone was looking to go with them further. But but he did have like some strategy there on why he's allying with them. And again, like he had a sense of humor. Like, I feel like he's laughing along with the joke that Jeff Kent's playing Survivor.
Yeah. Yeah, like I mean that even like the venom he has during his final words are sort of tinged with this like, why do I care so much? This is so stupid that I care, but I do. What is wrong with me? Like I'm a big deal and I'm like really upset about this. That's dumb.
Yeah,
like,
no, it's so great. It's so great. I love it. I mean, and just as the capper on this episode, it's perfect. It's so perfect.
Yeah, the perfect touch. And then so then as you were saying, we go back into the next episode and Tanner is like, man, what happened there? Or he's like, oh, how did that happen? Crazy. But I think I love that, Abby starts off just railing on Mike Skupin because she's decided, like, I don't know what her evidence was, but clearly Skupin is the one who voted for her. And he's like, what are you talking about? And like, Penner, she doesn't even ask, like, Penner just happens to be walking by and he was like, it was me.
Like, yo, I voted for you. And she's like, wait, it was you?
I was mad.
She was like, it was you? And he's like, yeah, because I don't like you. That was like his entire explanation. He's like, yeah, I don't like you. I think you're mean and I was pissed off. And that was it. And they just like leaves.
Penner out.
Yeah, maybe she thought like Malcolm was still with her. Like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Because, he was such a much more important part of this alliance, but then, pulls a Jervis and, like, forgets to name him when she's, like, going through it. Which, I mean, at least that makes sense because she's naming original Tandang, but, like, that's the whole point. But then she's still like very upset with Lisa and is like, Lisa, you are so gullible. I don't know what it was that Lisa was supposed to be believing in this case. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, Lisa's the one that cast doubts on you guys. You guys were so confident in Malcolm. She was the one that exposed the fact that he was hiding something from you, and you blame her for being too sweet and gullible. She's the one playing the game.
Was she gullible for believing Malcolm had an idol? Like, I don't, like, what was there even?
She had an idol!
Exactly! Like, that's why it just doesn't make sense. Like, what?
Oh my God.
What's the frame of mind?
Right, it makes no sense. And what's funny is, so it then sends, like, kind of like Lisa into a spiral. And, like, most of this episode is Lisa's doubts, right? Most of this episode is the fact that Lisa, after being kind of, like mistreated by Tandang, despite being, more in with them than Skupin and RC were,
Right.
She's still kind of like berated by like Abby all the time and mistreated by the three bullies over there. And, it's like all about her doubts. And the funny thing is, like, I feel like her exposing someone's idol that wasn't necessarily working with you would normally be something where your allies would be like, hey, good work there.
Yeah. Wow, we would have been fooled. Like,
Right. And instead, it causes this moment where after Tribal, she, like, after getting yelled at by Abby, she goes off. And again, this is another great, like, Malcolm and Denise moment. Malcolm's forgiving her and, like,
yeah.
listening to her and doing all that. And Denise is just kind of standing there because, like, whenever anyone's being a therapist, like, Denise has to be around, apparently.
Yeah. Yes, I'm observing my new trainee, so I'm just gonna be sitting in here, just pretend I'm not here. I'm just here to observe.
That's exactly what it was like. But the real meat of, like, the Lisa, like, doubts and conversations this episode goes to Penner.
Yes, this is like Penner at the most pennery Penner that could ever penner.
But also, like, this is Penner at his best. Like, we talk about Penner.
That is Penner at his Penner. We love Penner.
Right, but, I mean, we talk about his flaws. We talk about how, like, Penner definitely does, like, things that are, like, he definitely has flaws in this game. But his connect with Lisa in this episode is masterful.
Right. And he certainly has an advantage, having also been a smaller part, but, like, been involved and being involved in the Hollywood industry. But, so he's really able to connect with her that way and, empathize with how tough, being a child star probably was, and, like, having to be, winner and all of that.
Yeah, and he does the Denise thing, which I guess I'm now calling it the Denise thing, where he then is like, I know, that, like, that these pressures, have, made you always want to please people. They, basically, like, extrapolating personality traits from what he knows of her background, from, like, what he knows about her, from what he's seen, all this stuff. And I call it the Denise thing because she's doing it all the time throughout the season, but he does it really well here. And, like, and what's great is that she's like, how do you know all this? Yeah. How do you get me so well?
Yeah, because yeah, she doesn't know his background, of course. And then, like, sure, Scoopin recognized her, but that was from much more of a, like, he just still sees her as, like, a fan, whereas, like, Penner sees her as a peer.
Right.
So, he's able to kind of connect in that way.
Yeah, and I actually want to flash back a second to the Merge episode. Penner has a great, even his, when they show the conversation they have where he talks about recognizing her, and even the way he recognizes her is very different and connects on a different way than Scoopin does, because he goes, they're too young to recognize you, aren't they? And she's, like, laughing, because it's like, it's like, oh, haha, we have this, like, secret together. We know this thing together. Instead of, like, fanboying over her, they're laughing about this, like, inside knowledge.
Yeah, because it's not like he confronted her. It's like, I know who you are. He's like, so they don't, none of them know. It's like they're too young.
Yeah. Right. And then, of course, he buys trust by saying, oh, I won't reveal anything. It's, I mean, like, yeah, it's great. And really what we see in this episode is a kind of, like, two different conversations that happen at, like, two different parts. And I think the second one's kind of the more famous one, because that's I'm like a storyteller. That's what I do. Right. And Penner basically starts, like, narrating, like, the game's themes, like, in real time. And it's so great.
Completely demolishes the fourth wall.
I mean, geez. I mean, he's like basically in the living room with us, like, like.
Wouldn't you rather she vote with me than these guys, right? I know. What did she do?
Yeah, right. Yeah, come on. It's like, who's the heroes and who are the villains in this season? Because they're going to be people that they're going to be rooting against, and they will definitely like you for your loyalty, but they'll like you more for who you're loyal to. And it's like. It's so, I mean, like, his first conversation is good, like, survivor play. It's good, like, connecting with someone. It's good kind of, like, walking them up to a line, getting them into a place where they could flip. The second conversation is just like, that's like the super Penner conversation. That is like Penner using his like film background combined with Survivor play to just like give us like one of the more ridiculous conversations we ever had. And it's magic.
It's so fun. And it's so perfect. Like they're in, the low tide and sort of just like hanging out. Like it just, I don't know. It just feels so like natural when it's also so like surreal and weird. It's just it's a great segment.
Yeah, it's great. But you know what the funny thing is? After all of this, Lisa, I mean, we'll come back to like other stuff that happens in this episode. But after all of this, Lisa, who has been yelled at by Pete, who has been yelled at by Abby, throughout this episode, who Penner is talking down, who she's talking to Scoopin about flipping, who everyone is basically like, hey, Lisa's probably open to it. Denise even says like, hey, if we want to go after Lisa, we have to be gentle with her. All of this stuff. Lisa doesn't flip. This entire episode is setting up a Lisa flip, and Lisa doesn't flip.
She does not. She does not. And even with at Tribal Council, Abby being like, yeah, I'm a little worried about some of our Tandang members. And I don't know, you at least think she's going to say Lisa and Scoopin. But no, she's just worried about Lisa.
Yep. I think eventually she mentions Scoopin, but it's like after a while.
Because she says Lisa and everyone is like, wow. And Penner's like, see what she's dealing with here?
Right. But even that doesn't get Lisa to flip. And what's funny is, so this episode spends so, and this is like my one criticism of this episode, which is an episode I really like. This episode spends a lot of time on walking us to kind of understand why Lisa would flip.
Right.
That it spends no time telling us why Scoopin would flip. Now, it's perfectly understandable why Scoopin would flip because we've seen like the entire season why Scoopin would flip. But the story the episode's telling, in Penner's words, would make you think that it's Lisa that's going to flip at the end.
Exactly. Although the story also definitely tells, certainly in retrospect, like, Artis is going home.
Oh, yeah, no, that's clear as day. He has, like, the classic post-immunity challenge of, oh, we are fine. We're sitting pretty with 5 people. Like, who cares I didn't win an individual immunity?
At the Tribal Council. He's like, I feel good. And then, like, Denise said something. He's like, oh, I don't know. Like, you should be careful. And it's like, because I do think Artis watched the show, that he's sort of like, oh God. And it's like, well, I'm not saying I definitely couldn't be surprised. I mean, who knows? Something might happen. I'm not that comfortable.
Yeah, no, it is
like, oh God.
Yeah, and before we say goodbye to Artis, I do want to note that I saw something from him in this episode that I had not seen from him in any of the other episodes all season. He cracked a smile at one point.
Was it a smile?
Yeah, he smiled, and it was at the idea of being a toy ambassador to those kids. It's like they explain
that. Yeah, which is like a legitimate reason to smile. Which is like,
right? Yeah, it's like, hey,
kind of like whatever.
I kind of feel like, while Artis's like grouchy, grouchiness was probably very true to himself, I also think it was a little put on. Like, it's kind of like.
And I think he's one of the people where it really was the environment, where it's the miserable weather and the lack of food and the lack of sleep and stuff. I think that, is a big part. I'm still not sure, that even affable Artis is like gold, he's still just like nice man, he's not like casting gold or anything, but I don't think he is, Abby person, like where he's like an actual unpleasant person.
So let's talk about Abby and kind of wrap up the trio of terrible episodes that Abby gives us. And I want to talk about why one thing in particular here, which is why Abby is a terrible goat.
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe I once wrote a blog about why Abby was a terrible goat during one Survivor Cambodia.
I think you did indeed. So maybe I should talk because everyone knows why you think that.
Sure, go ahead.
I don't know. I mean, you could. I mean, you're the expert.
It to me.
No, I don't.
No, you opened the segment, so you may go.
Sure. Okay.
Like, we both hate Abby. We're both gonna have stuff to say.
Right. I mean, it's just so here's the thing. Like, you want a goat is someone who can't win at the end, right? But
Yeah.
that's like the definition that everyone understands of a goat. But you don't want someone who can't win at the end who's not controllable. And Abby is completely uncontrollable, and she's uncontrollable in the worst way because she talks too much and she blows up your game. Even Pete realizes this. Pete's like, "Oh yeah, I wish Abby didn't talk so much."
Yeah.
All she does is just say stuff that alienates your allies and the ones that, are on the most outside. She makes the boot order completely clear. She makes it very clear who's like in tight and who's not. She makes it, she reveals too much information about the idol, just everything. She blows your advantages time after time after time. And you can get to the end with an Abby, but it is so hard.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just hard because she's just pissing people off. So you have people who have more reason to flip than ever before. And we see some just amazing Abby reactions in this episode in particular. My favorite is actually from Denise, who they're talking in like, she and Penner and some other people like talking in the jungle. And Abby.
It's Malcolm, Denise, and Carter, and I know it's because I took note of it. So it's mostly Malcolm and Denise are talking, and Denise is explaining why it should be artists, because Abby wouldn't play an idol. She maybe would for Pete, because I think they could tell they've got a little something going on, but that she definitely, most likely, is just not going to give it away, and definitely wouldn't to artists. And then, Abby like screams in the ocean in the background, like, I found a clam. And Malcolm is just like, she found a clam.
Whoopee.
Yeah.
They definitely say whoopee because I made a note of that because that's the funniest part of that in my eyes. I think
it's so good.
But I thought it was Denise that said that because it was so out of character.
Denise says the whoopee. Denise is, Malcolm is like, deadpan, like, she found a clam. And,
and Denise goes, whoopee.
She found a clam.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, no, and it's so great because it's so out of character for Denise. And what I love, I mean, and we'll talk about this more in the next set of episodes, but the only person who can crack Denise's therapist facade is Abby because Abby's insane.
And like, I relate to that so hard, even though I certainly don't have a therapist facade, but I definitely get not being able to like take Abby. Like, that's just a bridge too far for her.
Yeah. So, okay. So why is Abby too much for you? Like, why is she a bad goat for you?
I mean, like, the not controllable is a big part. Like, she's a good goat. Like, Artist would be a good goat because he's just kind of hanging out, like, for Pete, let's say, because this is who's trying to make Abby a goat. Because sort of working alongside, but not really making any moves himself. Similarly, like, his attitude is not any better than your attitude. So it's not that he's like more likable. Abby is, alienating your other allies, alienating the people you need to work with, spilling the beans. Like, it's everything you said. I mean, the biggest part is where she just keeps yelling at Lisa for no reason. And I mean, Pete's just going insane there. Like, why is this happening? Why won't you? And then decides to date her anyway, but
Yeah, well, no, I mean, no, and all of that is just, I mean, it's not just Pete that was looking at Abby as a goat. Lisa was looking at the three of them as goats.
Yeah.
The reason she kept sticking with them, and I think this is a legit criticism of her game. I think she actually has played a pretty good game up to this point.
Yeah.
But the reason why she's sticking with them is because she's like, I can beat them in the end. But here's the problem. There's three of them. There's one of you, and you're the one on the outs.
Yeah.
You're not getting to the end with them, probably.
Mm-hmm. Especially, Abby has an idol. And then, like, I think I can see, like, what Lisa's going for. I think what she should have done is, like, gotten them to vote out Abby. Like, make sure they obviously don't think it's Abby because of the idol, although would she know to play it? Who's to say? But, and then you have an actual final and be like, I'm sorry, like, I know you guys were working with her, but you saw how she was treating me. Like, I couldn't do anything with her. We couldn't do anything together with her around. But now, we can be strong with, others and yada, yada. And I mean, I get that maybe she'd need another vote for that, for them to have the numbers.
Yeah.
To be able to do that, because then Calabar can kind of take over because Malcolm's with them. But it's just, she's just so much. Like, it's like there's a lot of people talking about like the fact that Abby, I mean, and obviously we'll go into this more later, but that Abby doesn't make the final three. And it's like, yeah, at a certain point, it's like, I don't care how easy you are to sit next to.
No, you got to get, I'm right, because she's too hard to control. And there's resentment at a certain point from the jury that you're just dragging her along.
Mm-hmm. That, that she gets to be there instead of you. And,
right.
That you'd rather work with Abby instead of me. Like, are you kidding me?
Right. So, I guess kind of the last thing to talk about is maybe why Scoopin flips. Or is that just really obvious?
I mean, I think, it's, the others don't really want to work with him. Penner's kind of someone he can actually work with.
Yeah. I mean, and I think like people are like, well, I know at the time people were like, well, why would he flip without Lisa? They seem so tight. Why would he do that? And I think it's because he knows that Lisa will come along. He knows that he can get Lisa, and then he knows that he's a pair. And, I think then he knows that there's some wiggle room on the other side, because the other side is, Malcolm and Denise are tight. Carter and Penner don't seem to be super tight with them. They're working with them out of convenience. So
right. And I also think that even though Lisa, he might not have told Lisa he was flipping, but they both talked about the possibility so much that I think he knows Lisa will understand, because they talked about it. Like, she was considering it. Like, she says, that she's really considering it. So he knows that she would. I mean, he could even be like, I thought you were going to,
Yeah.
Or is it like if he really had to? But like, at the very least, it's like he knows this isn't out of nowhere. It's not like it's not like a total blindside.
Right.
For lack of a better term. Like, they talked about it and they just wanted different things at that point.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess this is the question. Setting aside what obviously we were rooting to happen, is this a good move by Scoopin?
Yeah, that's honestly hard to say. Like, I guess, I mean, he could presumably kind of take Artis's spot in that case, because it's almost like the kill the goats thing of Suri, where almost more so than Abby, you think people are going to bring Artis because he's not as much of a wild card, but similarly is unlikely to be able to win, at least at that point in time.
Yeah, I also think,
the side he flips to has more potential winners than the side he flips from. So
yeah, so I think that's definitely the weakness in the flipping, is that I think the side he flips to, almost everyone over there, I think, could beat him at the end. And we joke about Carter being a non-entity, but I think in season people liked him a lot.
Yeah.
But
also, I would have killed for a Carter final tribal.
Yeah, that would have been really eloquent. But on the other hand, I don't think he could ever get to the end with with all three of Pete, Abby, and Artis intact. Like, he needs to whittle away at least one of them. And I feel like, if his, and we'll talk about what his strategy going forward is in the future, but I think this is a good move for him in the long run, because I think it takes the target off of him, which is really what he needs, because they're still talking about him as a backup target. And it gives him a lot of wiggle room to work. That's the other four are not super tight together. You could definitely get in there. And I think the one thing that we're not considering is the fact that Scoopin has a really high opinion of himself. And so whereas we don't think that he can beat anyone over there, he definitely did.
I mean, like if you didn't already know that, not the general you, the audience didn't already know this. There, I think, we weren't quite as entrenched in the community at the time, but there was a lot of talk about like that season being spoiled because Scoopin said he won. Like Scoopin definitely thought he won,
Right.
and Scoopin definitely did not win. But
nope.
Spoiler alert. But yeah, and I think also in regards to the vote and stuff, he's also already facing such an uphill battle in terms of winning because he's a returning player. And there's that sentiment of not wanting them to win. That, I mean, maybe he thinks like everyone didn't want a returning player to win and I got here anyway, which can be an argument. But like with that sentiment anyway, I mean, they say you gotta be with people you can beat, but you also gotta get there. So.
Yeah. And I don't think he ever would have gotten there had he stuck with Tandang. I don't because I think that 3 was really tight.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
So should we? I think we're at that time.
I realized partway through I forgot to put it on the breakdown, but I can fix that right after we're done recording, so it'll only happen for people watching live. But yeah, it's time for our favorite segment.
The Carter moment of the week. So I've been
moment of the week.
I feel like I've been opening the past 2 times, so why don't you start us off?
Okay. Mine's a very, very subtle moment. It's actually part of a scene we already talked about, which is when Denise and Malcolm are talking about why they should vote out artists, and they're kind of interrupted because Abby's excited about finding the clam. Carter's also there, standing, next to Denise, just kind of in the background. And while Denise and Malcolm are really talking about this like complicated vote, like how to decide which one to vote for and like keeping the idol in mind, like Carter's just like kind of lifting his shirt and working and just like picking a zit on his chest, just like trying to give it.
Oh, Carter.
And that's my Carter moment of the week.
That's a good one.
Thanks. What's yours?
My Carter moment of the week is right after the really crazy tribal. In the next episode, they come back, and Penner, after owning up that he voted for Abby, he's sitting down with Carter, and he's kind of like, "So what happened there?" And Carter is explaining to Penner what happened. And he's like, well, we had 5 votes, we only had 4 votes because you voted for Abby. And Penner's like, oh, so I blew it. And Carter's like, yeah, I guess so. And it's just like, I'm really not capturing it, but it's Carter explaining strategy to Penner. Oh, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So that would be my Carter moment of the week.
All right. So for the next episode is when we have our altered scheduling, correct?
Yes. So we are not here next Thursday. If you tune in next Thursday, you won't see anything. I think instead the next episode is it the 10th?
Yes, I believe this is Monday the 10th. Same time, same place, different day.
Different date and date. Yeah. Monday the 10th is our next episode, and we'll be talking about the next 3 episodes there.
So that will be 10, 11, 12?
Correct.
Cool. All right.
Okay. So why don't you close us out?
Okay, so you can find the podcast and our website, including Kemper Boyd's Survivor New Zealand coverage, at purplerockpodcast.com, the show's Twitter handle, where we link to these shows. So keep an eye out on the 10th, Monday the 10th, is at Purple Rock Pod. I am at Purple Rock Emma.
I am at Purple Rock Matt.
Not Mark. But you can follow him too, and no one else. And yeah, so we will see you in a week and a half-ish. Happy 4th of July to the Americans. Happy Canada Day coming up to the Canadians. And nothing for the UK.
And theme music.
Except, I guess,
Well, okay, I guess.